maybe this isn't right or this doesn't feel right. All I could hear was my AG background and like my youth pastors back home being like, Jeannie is like the Mecca. If you're going to learn ministry, this is who you want to learn it from. This is where you need to be. She knows all. She's America's youth pastor. You know, Christianity Today named her the America's youth pastor. And so you kind of like discount the voice inside of you.
Hey, everybody, Mike Donahue, Brian May, and special guest, Juliana Morris, all the way from Bangladesh. Just kidding. Where do you live? Texas, right?
Oklahoma City.
Oh, my bad. Oklahoma City.
Close.
Yeah, you're in the vicinity. Well, you're on Groomed, and we are having a special guest, like I said. This is Juliana Morris. She is one of the architects. I guess that's a good word, of the change.org right after in 2020 when all that stuff went down with Jordan Marcon and the whole thing. A bunch of students, a handful of students actually, began to make it possible for victims to tell their story. And they're my heroes. I mean, we're going to have them all. We've had Melissa on and, Adam Hume maybe coming on. There's a few others, Dave Bricky, and I'm going to miss some people, but so excited to have today because she's one of those ones that made it possible for people to tell their story. And she has her own story. And so she's going to come on and tell her story. So, hi, Juliana. How are you?
You know, I'm hanging in.
Good.
Happy to be here. You guys have really done such a great job at just picking up where we kind of left off. And you have carried this story throughout the last couple years and just really kept bringing places for people to speak out and really in their own timing to find their own healing. And so I think that's really, really impactful. So you're a hero of mine as well.
I got my cape in the back. I'll just put that on later. So, Juliana, you come from an Assemblies of God background, don't you?
I do.
So give us a little, tell us about you.
Yeah, so my parents were in full-time ministry my whole upbringing, really until I guess my second year of master's commission. They went through a divorce and, well, you can't stay an AG pastor after that. Anyhow, they're not in ministry anymore. Well, I guess my mom is in some respect, but she works at a church and does some care ministry. Anyway, rabbit hole. So I was an AG pastor's kid from the time I was born and saw a lot of the good, the bad, the ugly. I was like the poster kid for AG and just thought it could do no wrong. And we were above every other denomination and just...
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, the AG way. But yeah, I also had some bumps and bruises along the way and hurt from watching my parents go through some things or, whatever. So I saw the up close and ugly side of ministry, but I saw a lot of the really great stuff of it as well.
Awesome. How did you end up meeting Mrs. Mayo?
Yeah. So I met Jeannie the summer before I was a first year. So the way I met her, well, back up. My junior year of high school, I was in a really bad car accident and was left with this like rare pain disorder called complex regional pain syndrome. There's actually like a Netflix documentary about it, something about Maya. Anyway, the doctor that diagnosed me was actually interviewed on that documentary. So it's a pretty ugly disorder and it was very disruptive to my life. My junior year of high school, my doctors pulled me out of school and I had to go to like homebound studies. I was in a wheelchair quite a bit. I went from being like an honor student and really engaged in the youth group and had a job and all of that to really just bedridden a lot of the time. Didn't have a lot of hope. I had gone from being really social to like, a lot of people don't understand. And I still like looked normal. So there was a lot of people thinking like is she making this up? Pain is invisible, so you can't really see it. And so there was just a lot of hurt and baggage. I went through some like times where I felt really suicidal, just in a bad place, and was really very deeply upset with the Lord at like this is where my life is. So that's important to the story a little bit later. But anyway, the summer before I came to masters was not on my radar at all. In fact, I hated master's commission. I had seen a lot of them. Go ahead.
So you knew about masters before you even considered it because obviously you were an AG pastor's kid. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so my youth pastors, when I was in youth group, they had come from a master's commission in Alabama, and I don't think that they actually like met Jeannie or like were close to her. This is like years before, or I guess that yeah, this was still years before the cadre, but they like worshipped her. They loved her teachings. We heard about Jeannie Mayo like my entire youth ministry, like it, as a youth kid. And we'd hear her Jeannieisms. We'd hear, all the stuff. My youth pastor's wife had us, a lot of us call her mom. And it was all because of like, well, Jeannie does this and we do this in masters. And, but I had seen a lot of kids go to not Jeannie's masters, but a different one. And a different couple, and they'd come out and they were just kind of weird and messed up and had a lot of baggage. And so I was like, yeah, that is not for me. And so I was planning, I wanted to like go into ministry, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to be in the church or what. And so before my car accident, I really had thought about doing like psychology and being a therapist specifically for like pastors' kids. That was really where my heart was and where my calling was. So I thought I was going to go to Evangel and go do that. And like masters is for losers. No offense, but
I ran two of them, so
yeah,
yeah, sorry. I'm really sorry.
they're not all bad. I guess
Oh, they're bad.
hindsight's
You were
2020.
not wrong.
So I had all these plans, and then this car accident kind of just like wiped those plans away. And I was like barely passing special ed programs like on the homebound studies because my health was just so bad. And so that kind of dream like escaped. And so I was really not living for the Lord the summer before I went to masters. I was real upset, living in my bitterness, and just like, God, you did this to me. You've moved us around the country following your will. I've lost everything. I was just bitter and still, I think, pretty suicidal. And so I went to Branded by Fire. Our youth group went like every year. It's this like conference in Pensacola. Jeannie was a speaker. Judah Smith was a speaker. Michael Rowan was a speaker. Just a lot of, big names in ministry. And it had been like my second year to go. I was in my wheelchair, and I think it was the day that Judah spoke. And I like one thing about complex regional pain syndrome, there's never a break from the pain. You feel it 24 hours a day. Some days it's worse than others, but it's just always there. It's like static in the background. And I remember just being really moved in his service and feeling like at the very end, I felt every bit of pain leave my body. And so I was like, what in the world? And so I was like, well, I'm going to test this. So I'm like standing in the back, and I was like, started to do some jumping and like things that would usually trigger enormous amounts of pain, and nothing was being triggered. And so I ran back and forth a little bit. I was like, what is going on? And I don't remember how up front they figured out what was happening, but they had me like come on the stage and share my story. And so I did that, and Jeannie was, I think, speaking the next day or the day before. And so she was in the crowd, and she found me and had me come talk to her for a little bit. And so, of course, my youth pastors are like, Jeannie Mayo found you in a crowd and pulled you to talk to her. They're just like, this is amazing. And so, I felt like,
Run, run, run.
I
and
was gonna
always,
say, did she say anything to you like, "Come here, my pretty"?
you know, probably. Probably. Who
Sorry, Mike. You can
knows?
maybe you want to edit that out. I don't know.
Maybe not.
Fine. So she did her thing of just, when Jeannie's attention is on you, you feel like the sun is beaming on your face and there is nothing else in the room. And so she did that. She does that with everybody. And so I felt really special, and she was like, you need to come to my master's, and I really just feel like you're called to be with me and learn ministry under me. And after we talked for like 20 minutes, I think. And so I was like, well, that is so nice of you. Thank you so much for that. I am really not a fan of master's commission. And so I'm sure yours is lovely, but I can't. And so she got my cell phone number and she called me like 3 or
Wow.
4 times that summer, and we would talk for like an hour and a half each time. And I can't even recall what we talked about or what happened, but she really was just like convincing me to come to masters. And so I did. So that was like in June or July I met her, and by, I think the end of August I was packing all my stuff and headed to Atlanta. And
What year was that? Can you?
yeah, that was 2006.
Okay.
2006. And so my parents and I had all really been against masters, but at that point it was like, what are you going to do? Stay home and not go to college, because my health was so, whatever. Jeannie promised like they would take care of me and they would accommodate for me, and they did for my physical health. And they made a lot of arrangements for me to be able to be there. And so it was kind of like, I don't really have any other choice. So I met her for a reason. Obviously, God wants me here. She's telling me God wants me here. And who better than the Jeannie Mayo to tell you what God wants? And so I went, little do you know. And so I got there, and probably, I think in the first month, there were like 3 or 4 different times she was speaking from the stage where she like called me out specifically, and like just a very doting, like, this is my girl kind of way. And it was obvious I was going to be one. She has a handful of kids that come up close to her, but was really evident from the start that I was going to be one of those people. And so, like, at one point it got a little uncomfortable, because I was like, you know, like, my roommates aren't really loving that you're just talking about me all the time.
Right.
um,
That was very purposeful, by the way, but we'll get to that.
yeah, it was. But anyhow, she just really spent a lot of time with me. I remember my first year, like, we would meet up at the mall and just go get lunch, just me and her. And which she may have done that with some other students. I'm sure she did, but it wasn't something that I think happened with the majority of people. So we had this really, really big closeness. And I just, she would tell me like, you're my daughter. And she would mention all these people that, in the master's world, you hear of like being like the greats, and she'd be like, you remind me so much of that girl, and she was mine. And just, just really kind of laying it on thick. So I was bought in. I was like, she convinced me that this is exactly where I needed to be, and that this was the most amazing place ever. I had never felt more accepted and loved than in, like, especially the early days of master's commission, of my journey anyway. It just, our slogan was like, it's a family thing, and once family, always family. And it just was so like, this is your end all be all, this is everything. And really, they kept us so busy. Nobody told us we couldn't call home and talk to our parents, but like, when would you have time? So, like, I remember my little brother just being like, we were really close before I left, and he just felt, well, my mom says anyway, he like felt really abandoned by me. So we just got really busy in masters, and just very devoted to the program and to the loyalty of Jeannie, and just all things masters. And then, I was a 19-year-old idiot kid that hadn't been living for the Lord until about or had taken quite a bit of time away from the Lord until about a month before I came to Masters. And so I still had a lot to work out. And, part of the first year is like, you don't talk to the opposite sex, and you don't date, but you're not supposed to talk to them unless it's directly ministry related. I remember there was another first year that like during Thanksgiving break, he like found my number in an office or something. And so we like text all through Thanksgiving. We met up at the end of the break, and I think he like held my hand or something. I mean, it was just like so benign, but it was against the rules. And we had this conversation of like, we've got to cut this off. We got to delete each other's numbers, and we'll talk after graduation. And just like, we really need to give God everything. And I'm sorry we broke the rules this weekend. And the whole nine, just very 19-year-old dramatic, like, all of that. And so, but I just felt so guilty. The guilt and the shame. I mean, it was cut off. I didn't have his number anymore. I had no intention of like doing anything, but I felt so terrible for breaking my covenant to God and to Masters. I told my accountability partner, who went to leadership, and as she should have, I guess, went to leadership and let them know what happened. I remember they called me in the office, and I really.
When you say they, who's they?
So I think it was Jordan. So I can't ever remember being disciplined directly by Jeannie. All the times that I was disciplined, and to me, I feel like this is really strategic looking back on it, but all the times I was disciplined by like my discipleship director or Jordan, who was like, at that time, he was still just the assistant director of the program, but he was Jeannie's right next to Jeannie. And so, I think he called me in and talked to me about it. And, they were like, the whole team's been talking, and this is what we really think you need. You need some restoration, and we really should be letting you go. And we should be kicking you out right now, but we're going to give you
Holding the guy's hand?
For holding the guy's hand, yeah.
And I didn't get caught. Like, I didn't get caught with that. I told him myself. But
can we just pause here for a minute so that everybody watching this podcast who is not familiar with that whole world can just kind of soak that in at how weird and bizarre and abnormal and like straight off a Netflix cult documentary that is. And I want to ask you a question too. I want you to continue. I don't want to interrupt your flow, but you said you were never directly disciplined by her. Was there a time where, let's say, maybe the discipline came from another place and she kind of came to you and said, "Oh, honey, it's going to be okay. I'm with you on this." Did she play that game with you? All right.
Yeah. I would get after the discipline, after all the bad, after, I've kind of been in her shadow for a week or two, or maybe not even that long, but just thinking like, man, I've lost everything and she doesn't love me anymore, or, whatever. She'd call me to her office, or I think one time we went and had lunch. We met at the mall and had lunch, and she's like, I really had to work to get them to keep you here. And they all wanted you gone, but I told them no. God's not done with you yet. And I mean, it's just so manipulative, and so you feel indebted to her. Like, this woman saved
100.
my life. You feel like.
And we all understand that was very measured and very much on purpose, right? That wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
That happened on purpose. Yeah.
No, it's a strategy. And I mean, I don't know. I wasn't perfect, so it wasn't the only time. Not that they ever thought about kicking me out. That was the only time of that. But, if you're not getting corrected at Masters, then you're doing something wrong.
Well, it is rather out there for a 19-year-old to want to hold hands with someone of the opposite sex. I don't know. That's pretty edge case.
I just let a Jezebel. But, at the end of the day, like, I agreed to a certain set of rules and I didn't follow them. And so I felt this huge cloud of just guilt and shame. And so what they decided was the path for me, because of my health. I couldn't do the like typical probation days, where those were like basically like you're on army like drills, or you're up at 4 a.m. and you've got like 4 hours on a Saturday of like physical activity. I couldn't do all that. So they decided to do a 3-day in-house suspension. And what that looked like was my roommates weren't allowed to speak to me. Like not hi, not nothing. I was not allowed to speak to them, and they were not allowed to speak to me for 3 days. No one was in the school. And then I'd get to go home, but I'd come in the morning, and instead of going like to prayer and to class and all the, split off, they would have me in the basement of the church. There were these like Sunday school classrooms. And so they put me in a Sunday school classroom, and I don't know if they actually locked the door or if I just was so terrified to step out of line that, I was not moving from that room until Jordan came to get me and let me out to use the restroom or bring me lunch or whatever. But they had me read a book while I was down there, telling yourself the truth. And then I had to like write a report on it, some sort of essay. And just, they were like, even throughout this, you really need to learn how to tell yourself the truth. And they were like, you're carrying all the shame and guilt, but you really need to focus on learning who God tells you that you are. And so I was like, okay, well, thank you. What a gift. This is amazing. And so I did that. And then the second part was like a week later, they pulled all the first year girls together, and I had to confess what I had done. And they gave me like talking points of like, I wasn't allowed to say it was someone that was in the program. I wasn't allowed, because I don't think he ever had to tell anybody. I don't know, but I don't think he ever had to tell anybody what happened. But I had to tell all the girls that I was sorry for breaking the sisterhood, that I was like sorry for, just breaking my covenant to God, and that I was going to spend the rest of the year really focusing on the sisterhood and leaning into these relationships. And I just remember sobbing, like uncontrollable sobbing, with so much just guilt and shame. And like, I mean, it was like I murdered someone, but I just felt it so heavy. And just felt like, I need to take accountability for this, or I'm never going to be able. I remember they said a lot, like, you'll never be able to have a healthy marriage if you can't get a hold of some of these things in your life. And I heard that a lot. And so I just remember feeling so much guilt and shame. And I remember the girls in the room, like, some of them were like really upset. Some of them never really wanted to get too close to me after that, because I was like, that I was the bad one wearing the scarlet letter. And then some of them kind of were like, girl, I was like having sex with my boyfriend on break. Like, you gotta chill. This is not that, like, it was bad. You broke the rules, but you're okay. And so I just, kind of fell in like a range of things. But I think what changed in me was just such a deep level of shame that I don't think I've been in therapy for many years now. And that's still something that I just really, really work on, is the shame that I carry, or the guilt, and just not able to trust myself. So
Would you,
that's
could I
one
just
of the,
ask you a question right
yep.
there? Would you attribute that shame primarily to your experience at Masters, or does it also involve in just coming up in the AG, or where would you pin that?
I think for sure there's some coming up in the AG. Coming up in the AG, I had lots of problems, but it wasn't the pressure cooker that was Masters. And it wasn't constantly being told. I mean, I think my entire 4 years there, it was being told like, no, you're not hearing from God. I'm hearing from God, and you are doing wrong. Like my my second year with my pain disorder, well, my passion was like the pastor's kid ministry. And so the entire reason I came back for a second year was to work with the cadre. That was like my goal. I wanted to learn everything I could about it. I wanted to be involved in it. I wanted to do it all. So they made me like the house team lead my second year for the cadre. But I had a lot of physical restraints. I mean, I just did. So I delegated a lot. That didn't sit well with some of the other leaders. Like, they felt like maybe I was just being lazy. And so but the ultimate problem was there was a new leader that came on to masters that year, and so I didn't know her well at all. It was actually Judy Gregory, and she saw me like I really tried at the cadre. These youth pastors are wired to focus on somebody else's problems and to focus on other things, and the cadre was about us serving them. And so I really tried at the cadre not to use my wheelchair, not to use my cane, not to have any appearance of something wrong with me, because I didn't want them to be asking me questions or like them trying to minister to me when that's our job. And so there was one day I was like really struggling physically, and I was like walking through, it was like a lunch break or something, and I was like walking through Jeannie's living room, through the dining room to the kitchen to get out and go back downstairs and just take a rest. And so I guess I like grabbed like a place in my like sciatica to kind of like steady myself so I didn't limp through the kitchen when I was around like all these youth pastors. And I didn't think anything of it. I just got downstairs, and like then that like after that cadre was over with, I get called to my discipleship director's house. And she says that someone watched me, and it was Judy, who, to her credit, she didn't know me like at all. This is very early in the year, but I think it was like their first cadre that I had worked. But she said that she watched me walk through the dining room completely fine, and then when I got in the room where all these youth pastors, these men I seductively framed my backside and walked, like real seductively through the kitchen.
Like Ginger on Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
That's old. That dates me.
So that's about.
And to be
Anyway,
clear, she didn't come. To be clear, she didn't come speak to you first to try to understand what was going on. She just went over your head. Okay, go carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, I had no idea about it. So my discipleship director was, called me to her house to have this conversation. And she said that, and I just was like sobbing. I was like, what? I would never. Like, there has to be some other, like, I don't understand. Like, how could this get mixed up? I'm not saying she's lying, but and it didn't even click with me. Like, that I grab my sciatica, I apply a little pressure, and then I could, like, get through the room without a limp just for a couple steps and then be good. But in that conversation, I'm like sobbing and like, I don't understand. They said, well, you're not safe to be around these youth pastors, and so we're removing you from the cadre team. So
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I don't know why it's getting to me. I have done a lot of therapy, but and I just so earnestly was just like, I would never, like, the cadre is the most important thing to me. I would never try to be unsafe with them, or like, what do you think I'm trying to do? And she said to me, I'll never forget it. She said, Juliana, I think there's just something so innately seductive about you that you don't even know it's consciously happening, but it's something you have to work on.
Yeah, I want to stop there and say this.
Yeah.
That's just crap. That's all that is manipulation and jealousy. Because, I mean, I don't mean to be weird or anything, but you're really cute. And so some of those girls probably aren't. And they're viewing you through their insecurity and then spiritualizing their jealousy. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry you had to go through that.
No, thank you. And thank you.
I am as well. And I'm just going to add on top of what Mike said. The real sting to this is that this wasn't about a sincerely held belief or morality, because if it was, they would have policed all the sexual abuse and other abuse that was going on right under the skin. People who were really doing things, not you, who were, holding on to your sciatic nerve so you could get through the room without limping so no one would feel sorry for you. That's what you said. And they turned that around, all the while covering up all this just heinous and ridiculous stuff. It's important for people to see it in that context, because that just magnifies just how awful and manipulative and abusive those actions were. And so I am so sorry that you had to go through that. No one should.
Well, Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot from you guys. And I think you become a part of the system. And so I'm sure I told girls as I went on through the rank, like I stayed 4 years and then left and came back to volunteer for another 2. I'm sure there are girls that I've said not that, but that I've told like, okay, you're really getting too close to the guys, or you become a part of this environment where even the person that said that to me, I really believe her motives were genuine. I really do.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think there was a culture of tattletales? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, explain that.
So I think the entire culture is built on like, one, you're all jockeying for who's going to be mom's favorite, Jeannie, whatever. And so you're all jockeying for that, but then you have these like accountability like reports that you fill out every week, and you turn in every sinful thought you've had or everything you've done that's out of line.
Wait a minute.
You didn't know we did this?
No.
Yeah.
What the heck?
No, it's all the honor system. So there's some of us that took it like really seriously, like this is my commitment to God, and I'm going to put on here every single thing I'm struggling with this week. And then some people are
I would
like,
have been kicked out the first week.
yeah, some people are like that. Sorry, I guess you'll have to bleep that. But like some people are like, screw that. I'm not doing that. And they'll write like, I wanted to listen to a secular song or, something like that. But no, we had to fill out these reports every single week. And then we'd have like our ISI meetings, which is iron sharpens iron. That's your accountability partner. And then you had that every single week. And the nature of those is really like you're there to sharpen each other. And if you are not calling each other out, and if you're not like, if something's bigger than just calling each other out, if you're not bringing it up to your discipleship director, then like that's a problem. You're complicit. And so it was a whole system of tattletaling and secrets and just, yeah, you go through it so deeply. And so it really is kind of what it's all built on. And as you go up in the ranks, like your second year, your third year, your fourth year, they do these second, third, and fourth year retreats. And a lot of it is centered on training you how to confront someone and how to like call out the bad, and how to find the hidden sin. And the whole point of it is they would say like masters is like a mirror. And if we're not helping them see these things that they can't see them in themselves, of the places that they're sinning or the places that they're failing, then we are failing as leadership. We're not doing our jobs. And so it's our job to call this out and call out the good. And it's like a mirror. And it's I remember them even saying like the whole process of masters is to break you down so we can build you back up in the image of Christ. And that was like the mission. So, I think even my discipleship director, who I love to this day, it was deeply upsetting, but she wasn't there. She didn't see it. It didn't click with me until I called my mom sobbing, saying like, they've kicked me off cadre. They say I'm not safe. And she's like, honey, that's what you do when you're hurting really bad. Like you grab your side and you walk. And I was like, oh, I know. Then I was like, but mom, they said there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on with me, and I just really need to like lock in. And I'm doing this for my husband one day. It's all this just babble and crap that is so deeply psychologically damaging. The amount of like therapy I have done spent on just those two like encounters is absolutely wild. So I think that's a big part of it, of the system, of just like break you down. And then Jeannie sweeps in and she pulls you to the side and says like, I still see it in you. You're amazing. You're this, you're that. And we can probably get you cadre back if you just follow these things, and we can, and I'm fighting for you. And I'm the only, like, I don't remember. It's been like almost 20 years. So I don't remember if she ever said like, I'm the only one fighting for you, but that certainly was the subtext of like,
right.
I believe in you. And, I had to fight all these people to not get you gone. And for that instance, they weren't trying to kick me out or anything, but, but it just really, that was the theme throughout my years with Jeannie. And so I think looking back, it's just those really damaging psychological things that it becomes so ingrained in the culture that I really genuinely believe a lot of these people had really good intentions with what they were saying to me, what they were calling out in me, what they were doing. It
And
just,
I don't doubt that, but let me ask you this question.
yeah.
Because as I've been talking to more of you that were going through masters during that time, there seemed to be a double standard. If somebody was a favorite of hers, especially men, young men, that they could break the rules, kind of, and they wouldn't have that same level of accountability. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that was really common. She was, even her like beloved girls, she was way closer to her favorite boys, and she was way harder on us than she, in my opinion, way harder on us than she was to them. I think even just this example of like my first year, and the boy I held hands with was one of her, favorites as well. And I think he got, I don't know exactly what he got. I know he got probation. I think it was like 3 Saturdays or something, but he never had to tell anybody what he did. And he's the one that found my number and started texting me. And it doesn't matter. Like those
Yeah, but he
details.
initiated it, and he
But
didn't
he
get any. Yeah,
initiated it.
the double
He like,
standard.
and I'm the one that confessed it to them. And he was just gonna, like, he lied about it initially when they confronted him. And but he, to my knowledge, I think he got probation for a couple weeks, and maybe there was more, but I know there was no disclosure to the brotherhood that he had like betrayed them or anything like that. So I think that's definitely, there was a lot harder on us girls than the guys.
Yeah, and I think that whole thing about the favoritism and double standard, leveraging information. I know Jeannie is really good at pulling, your sin out of you. And it sounds like with Masters Commission, she just made that into a system. I mean,
Yeah.
she systematized that whole
Yeah.
thing and taught the leaders to do the same thing, leverage information, get information, and then use it as leverage.
Against them.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
just, to me, that's just not Jesus. It's so evil. It's so
No, you're
ridiculous.
absolutely right. It is. But when you're in that system and you're coming, even when questions would arise, it was like, huh, maybe this isn't right, or this doesn't feel right. All I could hear was my AG background and like my youth pastors back home being like, Jeannie is like the Mecca. If you're going to learn ministry, this is who you want to learn it from. This is where you need to be. She knows all. She's America's youth pastor. Christianity Today named her the America's youth pastor. And so you kind of like discount the voice inside of you and the Holy Spirit. You really like discount it and say like, no, I'm the one that's broken here. They're showing me all the things that I've broken and that is wrong with me. So I'm the one, I'm not hearing from God. This must be the enemy telling me I need to get out, or that I can't trust them, or this must be, you don't want to be a part of the undercurrent of negativity. Or, when people would get kicked out, it was like we excommunicated them. Like we were not allowed to talk to them. We were not allowed to stay in touch. We were not allowed to continue a relationship because they were no longer safe.
I want to talk about that in a minute, but I want to say this first. Brian always says this, and I think it's really important. He brings it up a lot that, we want to help people understand that it wasn't you, it was them.
Yeah.
And kind of what you just said about, when you try to question yourself, you're like, you're like, this doesn't seem right. And then you start questioning it inside yourself first. And then if you dare to go to a second year or third year and, voice that, which
It
is
doesn't go
really
well.
bold, it doesn't go good. Right? But that's true. And that's why it's important that you came on today too, because you said to me when we talked about this, but I don't know if my story's that impactful. Of course it is, because it's not just these dramatic things that happen. In fact, I think some of those things they're rare. No, we did have some sexual abuse and cover-ups and things like that, but what happened to you is what happened to hundreds of people. And so you're real important to this story because of that. So Yeah, thank you for sharing that and sharing that doubt in your head, like something's wrong with me kind of thing. So
Well, and I think that's the whole system of like this doubt in your head. Like I went through a fourth year there. I remember sitting as a fourth year, you're on support staff, but you're technically still a student. You're getting paid $50 a week to be there. And so, you're not paying tuition anymore. You're being paid, but it's just $50 a week. And you're just grateful that you're getting the opportunity to have on your resume that you worked for Jeannie Mayo. And your low level staff, but you sit in these first year interviews. And so the first year interviews were at the Tabernacle, at least, so the church that we were at when I was in master's. So they were really hyped up. They'd ask you these questions, and they'd ask all these issues, or they'd bring up your highlight reel, or the bad things you've done that year, and you kind of have to talk about how you've grown from it and whatever. So I sat in them through my fourth year, and I remember, I'll never forget this. There was this kid that was just dying. He was just such an earnest kid. I think he worked with like middle school age kids in the youth group, and they all adored him, but he didn't fit Jeannie's like charismatic prototype, look the part and do this. And so she never really, I don't know, maybe they were close, maybe I don't think they were ever close, but maybe I don't know. So he went through his interview, and in his interview it came out that like before masters he had come into just a little bit of money, and he had just enough to either do gastric bypass surgery or come to masters. And he, tears in his eyes, just like, I would never take this back. I'm so glad I came here, and I'm called to be here for a second year, and I want to keep loving all my middle school students and just learning from you, and just so earnest, and was like, I'm so happy that I didn't do the surgery and that I came here instead. And I'll never forget it. He walked out that door, the door closed, and she looked, I think, to Jordan, but I was to everybody. And she said, well, gosh, he really should have done that surgery, shouldn't he? And just the callousness. I mean, I just like sat there and was like, what am I a part of? But then by that time, I've been there for 4 years. I'm like,
you're
you're
sucked
in
in.
the system.
Yeah.
And every time for 4 years, every time you think like, what am I a part of? And that didn't sound like God. That didn't sound like this. You rationalize with yourself, and you hear like, no, she is the best in ministry. She knows what she's doing, and everybody makes mistakes. And,
Right. But and it's a progression. If that had happened your first week there as a first year, you would have packed up. Yep.
Yeah.
But you get sucked in. You get, the deeper you get into leadership, you see the real deal. That's why Reggie Dabbs, when he was giving me a hard time and telling me all that crap about her being represented by Jay Sekulow, I said, Reggie, did you work for her?
Never.
And he said, no, right. And so like, you didn't see this stuff. You didn't see behind the closed doors and how nasty she can be. Because she can be nasty.
It's vicious, and it's all part of the cycle of honestly like brainwashing. I don't remember which year it was. We did these like experience weekends where you're like having kids, high school kids or people just trying to check out masters to see if this is where they want to be the next year. They come for the weekend, they like shadow MC, like they shadow students, and there's a whole discussion of what rules we're allowed to tell them that we have and what rules we're not allowed to tell them what we have, or we don't want to lie about it, but we just don't really want to highlight or bring that up. They like prep us for those. But inevitably, there's kids that are like, you get close to these kids, and there's some that are disgruntled that are hosting the experienced kids, and they're like, this place is crazy, and we're not allowed to do this, or we're not allowed to do that. Inevitably, either on vacation, like going back home for a Christmas break or something, or an experience, somebody says like, y'all are in a cult, and like, aren't they like brainwashing you, and you're all like, this is not a cult. You can't be a cult that like loves Jesus.
Jeannie's my mom.
Yeah.
She
We're
loves
all just
me.
like drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's like the cognitive dissonance of like, no. And cults are not like, they can never be, it's not a cult. We're doing extreme things for God so we can be extreme ministry, like, what did she call it, kamikaze Christians for him. And we're going to witness for him, and that takes us doing some extreme bold things, and that's just what this is. It's not a cult.
Yeah. Right.
And so I remember there was like a Jeannie time, which is like all of the students, every Thursday we have like an hour and a half where we get like, she either comes in with a topic or it's like question and answer. And somebody just point blank asked, like, aren't we like using some brainwashing tactics here? Like, isn't this like brainwashing? And she like sat for a minute, and I'll never forget it. I mean, she just came back and was like, yeah. And I kind of was like, what? And she went on to say, like, if I can brainwash you for the cause of Christ, I will sleep just fine at night because I have done the Lord's work. And so you guys,
Unbelievable.
like,
I wish
that's our
Brian jumped off, but I wish he could have heard that, because he would have freaked out, because that's just disgusting.
It is. It's so gross, but you're already so deep in it and so brainwashed. I mean, I'm sure we were sitting there like taking notes feverishly and like, yeah,
brainwash
Mom,
kids for Jesus.
You know, like, that was great word, Mom. You know, just keep going in. Like, how amazing this revelation was, and like, this is our calling of, which just goes so against like biblical teaching of having a choice to follow
count
Christ.
the ways. Yeah.
Like, many ways, but especially it's like the Holy Spirit is he's a gentle spirit, and they're not going to force. The Bible talks a lot about that, like not forcing himself on us, and we get to choose whether we follow him or not. But if you're in ministry today and you're using brainwashing tactics to fill those seats in your congregation, it's evil. I don't care what your end goal is.
Yeah. And knowing the fact that that's a double standard, right? That kamikaze Christianity doesn't apply to her, because there's so many, she's so loose in the turns with her own morality. I mean, obviously we had Sean on and she slept with a student. There's other allegations that are pending that, some other things happened. I mean, there's such a double standard of that. She preaches kamikaze Christianity, but she no accountability.
None.
Somebody sent me a meme the other day that said narcissists want the authority of a king, but the accountability of a toddler. And that, to me, immediately Jeannie came to my mind. No accountability, just do whatever she wants, right?
Zero.
And then call it kamikaze Christianity.
Well, and you even look at like the trajectory of like their ministry trajectory, and like the churches that they've left, which have come out, like they've been fired from all of them. And some of them she would talk about being fired from. I remember like every cadre, there was a whole speech on specifically Rockford and how wronged they were. And just like,
and I know, by the way, for the listeners, I know the inside scoop there. They were not.
No.
It wasn't. They were fired not for the reason she's saying.
Yeah.
She's saying they fired her because the church wasn't growing. Nope.
Even like her stuff, she would always make it a big thing that like Cross Current was great, but like Sam couldn't grow his portion, which is just such a, I'm just being ugly and snarky now, but it's just such a cop out, and just such 100%. A narcissistic viewpoint of like, well, I'm not the one that was wrong here. I was wronged. And it would just be this big like victim, all that to say the lack of accountability. I mean, it's a pattern of just like, there's no repentance. There's no, I think when all the news in 2020 came out, I think I was one of the first people in that group that was like I posted, and I think the comment is still there because I posted it. And I believed it when I said it, of like, I just don't think that there's any bad motives of Jeannie or Jordan. I think you get lost in the system and you forget, like Jeannie would always say, if you believe your own press release, you're gonna end up in places where charisma can take you, but your character can't keep you, and you just don't believe your own press release. And I just was so earnest when the news initially broke of like, she means so well, Like she really does, and she's just lost in this. And so I think as more stories kept coming out, this the scales from my eyes started falling, and seeing like I wasn't just the broken beacon here that like needed help, and I had a bad experience because I was so damaged. Like that was the messaging of
Right.
like I was so damaged and I just needed help. And so they had to break me and beat me down so that they could rebuild me in the image of Christ. And I think that's how I like had internalized it for a long time.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think in 2020, I started seeing just hundreds of stories on that
Hundreds.
Facebook group of just like, oh, I'm not alone.
Right.
And this is not me. And I started to see, I think through walking through that, her like non-apology apology video came out where she just kind of said like, I've never been told any of this. And then staffer after staffer that I knew and really trusted were like, no, I confronted her on this. And I was quickly escorted out of the like I was quickly told it wasn't going to work out for me to work there very long. That was my
So I
last.
want to talk. We're getting close to the time ending here, but I do want to talk about that system of ostracizing people once they were deemed as backslidden or whatever terminology they used to give you guys the message that they were kicked out, they weren't part of the fellowship anymore. They were villainized as being not following God's will. And you guys were told basically not to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that process.
Yeah. So usually when somebody would get kicked out, or sometimes somebody rebellious would like leave, or rebellious,
Right.
I remember there was, was it my first or second year? There was a girl that was an AG pastor's kid in a Georgia district, and her dad came down and packed her stuff up. And from what I understand, told Jeannie, like, this is not Christ-like. This is not godly. This is not
for him.
My daughter is not participating in this. This is a cult. And she left. But after every time someone leaves, there's like a big, family meeting, and the whole master's commission gets together to discuss it. And it's always like, here's the reasons. Or sometimes they'd say, we can't tell you everything. We're not going to betray them like that. We're going to keep our integrity, but you just need to know they really broke so many rules. We gave them chance after chance, and it's time to be done. And you're not allowed to talk to them anymore. They are there's a negative undercurrent of like, that was the big thing. Like they had this negative undercurrent or rebellion that followed them, and they're not safe to be in communication with. And you are done, and you're not allowed to
It's
talk
so
to
manipulative and
them.
cult-like. It's so crazy.
It was horrible.
Yeah. And that goes back, by the way, she did that back in the 80s. There was a couple that I put it in my book. They confronted her on some morality issues with one of the other leaders, but she needed that leader because he was productive. So instead of honoring the truth of what this guy was saying, she spread rumors about his wife being a lesbian and made it so nobody could talk to them, and they were backslidden and they were deemed evil or whatever.
Well, and
It's so monstrous.
It's horribly monstrous, but that's the whole system of control. That's how she keeps the control, because if you kick someone out and they have a different story, or if something went differently, whatever, if you kick someone out and they start talking to the other kids about what happened or what actually happened, and it's different than what we're being told,
right?
Well, then
they're just controlling the narrative. That's all. She just controls the narrative, and that's manipulation and so narcissistic and
well, and
not
then
Christ-like.
no, it's not Christ-like at all. And then you're in this like realm of like, you have these accountability partners and you have these roommates, and you're supposed to watch for each other and really care enough to confront. That was a whole class, caring to confront. And so like, you really have this internal, like, yeah, you could keep it to yourself and stay in contact with them. And sometimes people did. I mean, my best friend today, I stayed in contact with, and she was kicked out her first year. But you have this whole culture of like, if somebody finds out that you're talking to them, they're going to tell on you, and then you're going to be on the chopping block. And, it's just the whole system. It's just so icky. And I just know too many people that have been in years and years of intense weekly therapy. trying to be able to walk into a church again. Like, that was me for a little bit.
Yeah.
I would have panic attacks every time I'd walk
I
into a church.
still don't go. I mean,
I don't go regularly. I go as much as I possibly can because it's important to my husband and my kids, but it's hard. And it's not an AG church. I'll never step in an AG church.
well, they're having problems right now. So
They're having
yeah,
big problems. But, it comes from the top. And they've covered her for a long time.
yeah. It sounds like
And
they're
other
not now,
people
but I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna say too little, too late, but now it's in their face. But I mean, I was there was several of us trying to get them to listen years ago that this
Mhm.
is, and the excuse I always got was, well, look at the numbers, look at the fruit, and their metrics are always, of success are always numbers and influence.
But, like, what they don't understand is, like, how many of her youth ministries were, like, when she leaves, it all collapses, and that's all part of feeding the narcissistic, like, it's all built on her, but it also, like, what kind of fruit is that if it's not sustainable without her?
Yeah.
That's not
Well, one of the
godly.
guys that worked in the national office, Rick Lormer, I mentioned him a lot, but he told me, he said, because he took over for her when she left to go to Rockford in Bellevue,
Mhm.
and this is word for word. He said the youth ministry was like a '57 Chevy that everybody admired, but when you looked under the hood, it
It's a
was garbage. It was a mess, and it was broken people, and there was like a trail of broken people. And but Brian mentioned it at the beginning of this, but there's still people back here in Bellevue, back here in Nebraska that, they hang on to their memories of her. And,
Mhm.
and so Brian was going to ask you this question. He jumped off, but I'm going to ask you this question to close it up. How does it make you feel when people like that will not look at the truth? Like they keep defending their her and their moments with her, and how to, it kind of like basically it minimizes your victimhood. How does that make you
Yeah.
feel when you hear of people that there's a girl named Lori Dorsey. I'm going to mention her because she got on our thing, and I will never believe that Jeannie did this. Steve White, he's the missionary to China. I will never believe. How does that make you feel?
So, I think I was a lot more bothered by it back in 2020 when, Reggie Dobbs was one of them in my comments, and then a lot of friends, friends that I thought I would have forever from Masters that don't talk to me anymore because they don't agree with what I did by starting this petition. It was really hurtful, and really, it's kind of perpetuating the whole system again of well, wait, am I wrong? Am I the bad one? It hurts. And it's like, no, I'm just speaking in my truth. At the same time, I have so much empathy for these people because I think what I've come to understand, I think for a lot of them, either they weren't close enough, or they were just there for a year, or they were never one of the ones that Jeannie really showered her attention on. So you don't get up close to really see it. I think it's either that, or some people, I think if you start, I think they can't go there mentally yet. And everybody has their timing of when they figure out that Masters wasn't exactly what they thought it was at the time. My awakening and no, it was an actual cult was 2020. And maybe I joked about it being a cult a few years before that, but that was cemented of no, we were a full on actual cult. But the fact is, there were years and years where I couldn't bring myself to say that. And I would defend her. And I would be the one saying, I don't think you're seeing the whole picture. And I don't think I think we're all in different levels of healing. And some people are never going to get that healing because they can't acknowledge it. But Mike, I genuinely think some people, it's not just Jeannie, it's tied up in their belief in God. It's tied up in their entire identity of this was good for me. And so I have a lot of empathy. I think I look at it and I say, I get it. You're not at a place where you can recognize that. And that is a shame. And I hate it when, especially people doing it to victims like Sean, that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
But
Well, even you, and that you have more, you have more class than I do. So I'm gonna
thank
just
you.
to say this. It makes me angry. Now I have grace for people who sat in the cheap seats. I've said this before. I don't have a lot of grace for people who were behind closed doors, or had the opportunity, like a Reggie Dabbs, to go behind closed doors because we're friends. I thought we were. And I was like, hey, we're friends. So let me tell you something that you don't know. And he didn't want to know any of that. Like that, I have a problem with that, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not casual friends. We've been friends for 30 years. But now you don't want to know. And again, I'm not thinking about me. I don't give a shit because I'm fine. Like I'm healed up. It's not about me. It's about you, Juliana. It's about you, and it's about Melissa, and it's about Dave, and it's about Adam, and it's about those of you that put your neck on the line. And you went, no, it's not you, it's them. And you did that. And I saw that, and I watched that, and I was like, and then I was waiting for the Jeremy DeWerts and these guys, Rod Whitlocks and Rick Lormers to come, and Reggie, and they didn't. And so, yeah, I'm a little angry. I'll be honest. I have to work through that because
days where I'm angry too, but I think what I try to tell myself is, and you're right. The guys you named, they're very up close. They have
I
seen
know
it.
they know.
I think where my empathy falls is for a lot more of like the students
Yeah,
that
I'm
just
good.
can't
I'm good with them.
seem to.
Yeah, you want to hang on to your memories? Go ahead. That's fine. I don't care.
But if those guys admit that this was wrong, they have to acknowledge that they've been complicit.
Right.
And that's,
But I've done that. I was complicit. I'm going to say it again.
Yeah.
Look at the camera. I was a victim, but I was also a perpetrator because that's what happens. So man up, Rick. Man up, Jeremy. Man up, Reggie. Man up, Rod. Okay, sorry that you were part of it too, but admit it. Admit it and move on. But you protecting her and pretending like it didn't happen hurts my friend Juliana, and it hurts Melissa, and it hurts Adam, and it hurts David, and it hurts the numbers of people. So stop doing that, you jerks. Sorry.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and you're right. You're right. It is hard because it's a mind warp of just making, like, are we all crazy? Have we missed the mark? And no, we haven't missed the mark. We're calling out what's biblical. Accountability is biblical. And she probably, with the stuff with Sean, she may never cop to because she can't. But I'm sure there's a statute of limitations.
Someday she's going to have to face the truth.
She will.
On the other side.
She will. But
it's going to be a tough day.
shown, if you have an outcry of hundreds and hundreds of students sharing heartfelt stories and you decide, no, I'm not going to change anything, you're not looking for accountability. You're not looking for ministry.
Right.
You want to call us, she used to call us, the group that started the petition, her detractors. We were her detractors, and we just wanted to take a bite out of her success because we didn't get any for ourselves.
So gross.
And it's like, no, we just want you to stop hurting people.
Right.
Just look in the mirror and change some things and apologize heartfelt.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who's a publicist, and he knows her. And he said, if I was her PR person back in the day, back in 2020, I would have said, Jeannie, just admit that you made some mistakes. And you would, and probably this wouldn't have ever hit the air, because then all her little cronies or flying monkeys would have been able to say, look, she apologized. But the fact that she never did is to her detriment, because if she had, it probably would have been easier on her. We wouldn't even have a podcast probably, because what are we going to talk about?
None of us would have gone looking for anything else.
Right.
And to be honest, I haven't gone looking for anything else in all that time. I felt like I'm going to do the petition and I'll stand by what the AG says. But yeah, they chose.
Well, listen, you've been awesome. And
thank you.
Brian's having technical difficulties, but I'll tell him that you said goodbye. But thank you so much on behalf of both of us. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. We definitely want to have you again. But wow, you unpacked a lot of stuff here. And there's a joke I want to tell you. Okay, you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
I heard this comedian one time, and I love this. I immediately thought of my experience with Sperino and Cross Current. He goes, yeah, you don't know you're in a cult until the last 5 minutes. And he's like, yeah, you sit there and all of a sudden you're going to shave off your hair. You're like, wait a minute, I'm in a cult. So I think the last 5 minutes might happen for people, 10 years from now, whatever, fine. It maybe never happened, but we were in a cult. That was a controlling environment that used guilt, shame, to leverage information out of people, to use that information to hurt them and to control them. And that's a cult. That's not Jesus. So thanks, Juliana. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank
I'll
you.
give you
Thanks
the
for all
last
the work
word
you
here.
do. Thank you for all the hard work you do. I really appreciate listening to all your podcasts. They've been so healing and helpful to me. Your book was very healing as well. So I just thank you. And thanks for letting me share my story.
I'm glad you came on.
I'm glad I did too.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.